What's happening, people? People X. Me. I like to just get straight into it. But our topic today, I guess what I like to talk about is things like small talk. Things like small talk and why me personally, I'm not gonna say I don't engage in small talk, but I've never been somebody to consistently engage in small talk on an everyday, with my peers or like just anybody. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with small talk or anything, but me as myself, and I understand other people identify with this. I can have them, but like most times, I don't necessarily want to or need to engage in small talk. The everyday detail of, hey, how are you doing? What is this doing? What is that doing? Things of, I feel, of like minute detail. Shit. Like me being me, and others might really identify with this, but you might be labeled as a quiet person, or you might be labeled as shy and things like that. But it's like I've been like this my whole life. I've never been the kind of person to need to walk in groups with people, or groups with people, eating with a whole bunch of people. Like I have always had the self-autonomy to do my own thing, and I just noticed it's not a and there's something bright. It's not something that's, I'm not gonna say popular, but most people don't necessarily, I feel as if most people can't necessarily identify with self and be able to do their own thing. Some people might look at going out to eat by themselves as such a negative thing, whenever it's like, I just personally feel that you should be able to bask in your own self, enjoy your own self, and you should be able to do that. There's nothing wrong with going to go eat out with people, eat out with friends, but whenever you can't go and do the simplest things without other people, that's whenever I feel like it's something wrong. And me being me, I've never been the kind of person to always have to do or identify with groups, like excuse me. And I just understand, I've been this way my whole life, and I've always been labeled as the quiet kid, or like the one that not necessarily, I'm not gonna say I be by myself. I mingle with everybody. I don't discriminate. I hang with the weird kids. I can hang with the kids that's deemed the hood. I can hang with even the white folk. Even though that's like not that's not my culture, but folks like to mingle around similar cultures. But me being me, I can identify with anybody. It really doesn't matter. And no matter even where I go, it's always the same, And whenever it comes to small talk, I notice myself that I'm not gonna say I don't care about the small details of people's everyday life. I like to make friends. I got plenty of friends, plenty of associates, people I know. But I'm not the kind of person to have to deal with the same group of people all the time. And I just think about it. I'm like, I used to think I was like weird, or like, I used to always think I'm like a bad person for not wanting to engage in the everyday small talk of, what are you eating for dinner? How was yesterday? How was your morning? Just everyday details that don't really lead to real deal meaning. Like me, I like to speak about grander topics. I like to speak about things that I feel as if actually matter, things that actually matter in the world. Things that actually are going to make a difference. And I'm an observer. I like to sit back, listen to people, and I just can't help it. That's just always the way I've been. I've always just been that kind of person to just sit back, listen, and just watch. And I'm not gonna say I don't speak, because say it's like that. Like, I'm sitting around listening to everybody talking, whatever. And if somebody introduces something that I'm interested in, hey, I had no problem with, butting in and be like, put my little 2 cents in there. But that doesn't necessarily mean I identify with, the full group or anything. I just feel that I can be free-spirited, get my little 2 cents or whatever, have a little mutual exchange in the topic that I'm interested in, and, just move on from there. There's so many things that I know of or know that I don't even realize I know up until somebody speaks about it, and I subconsciously learn. And, I just understand that I learn a lot of things whenever I just sit back and I absorb. I guess I'm like a cat or something like that. I'm that person that just sit in the corner and I just soak it all in. If I got something to talk about, I'll talk about it. But most times, I'm just listening, studying people, not trying to use it for my own personal gain or advantage. That's just the kind of person I am. And I just understand that is not very usual. It's not very usual. And sometimes people might even look at me as like I'm trying to be better than people, or folks think I'm trying to be conniving, trying to get an advantage, and label me as are you just listening to me, or like you just spying on me type thing. That's like or like folks might think trying to be better than them, but it's like, nah. I one thing I understand is whenever you identify and are comfortable identifying outside of the norm of what everybody else does, people look at that as like a threat. People look at that as like you're trying to gain some sort of advantage. But regardless, I'm gonna continue to be me. That's just who I am. Excuse me. And I can't help that. It's just I've never been the kind of person to just want to have to identify with the crowd. Just being able to have that self-autonomy, engaging in things that I like, like just for instance, like I'm on this trail damn near every day. I like to get my thoughts out. I like to walk in the sun. I got me a book in my pocket right now. I'm probably going, there's a little bench at the end of this trail. I like to sit down and just learn a little something real quick. And just, be about my day. And most of my time is really spent, with myself and my thoughts, things that I'm planning on. I update myself, with people and things like that. Frequent. But I'm just never the kind of guy to just always have to be around people, always having to, act in a certain sort of way. Like that's just not my thing. And I just understand how sometimes it can be viewed as a threat, or like some might look at it as, like I said, some people might look at it as you trying to be cocky, or like, oh, you're better than us. Why don't you ever say anything? Why don't you ever talk to us? It's like y'all was talking about celebrity bull crap. I don't really care to talk about celebrities and bullshit. It's just like, that's not gonna do anything for me. It's not. Like, it's, of course, it might be a little entertaining. I might talk about, a little bit of football, Steelers games, NFL, college football, and stuff like that. But it's like, those are the everyday topics and aspects that people, they damn near obsess over. And it's like, to me, I just feel that it's bigger things to, want to talk about, bigger things to want to worry about. Like me, right now, I'm 25. I'm focused on trying to build this thing called life, and I try not to introduce too many distractions. And I just feel that, a half-hour conversation about, or an hour conversation about, like the everyday small things, it's just like, I just feel it doesn't lead to anything, I'm not going to call myself an anomaly or anything, because I do understand it is other people out there like that, like me, and it's rare that I come across like-minded folks. And whenever I do, they stay in my life, and I do have those I do have my corner of, people that can identify with self, but, just like I said, I'm not going to say we don't hang around all the time, but, they do their own thing, I do my own thing, and we cross paths whenever we do, can't force anything. It's just, we cross paths whenever it happens. Everything happens for a reason, timing is everything. But, yeah, man, I just figured I'd get on here and just get it off my brain, because, I heard somebody earlier, I noticed somebody else, they was basically walking by themselves or like doing their own thing. And, me just naturally listening to other people's conversations, I hear somebody go like, oh, he's always by himself kind of thing. Not talking about me, but speaking about somebody else. And I'm just like, me, I didn't butt in, but I'm just like, what's wrong with that? Like just noticing that other people look at other people, seeing that they identify with themselves, and people take it kind of wrong. And it's just like, just because they're not wanting to engage in the same things that, it doesn't make them anything different. We all human. We all have different spiritual energies. Sometimes, you just might not identify with people's spiritual energy, and that's fine. Just find the channel in which you work with. But yeah, I just had it on my brain. Nothing wrong with small talk. I can engage with it whenever I want to, however I want to. Excuse me. Sometimes I might force it out, just to bridge certain connections, But that's all y'all got, man. Shit. Nothing wrong with being a quiet kid, I guess.